So hello, welcome to the video and welcome to Heathrow Terminal 2. That's actually the old Heathrow Terminal 1 behind me. Now there's not a lot of point being coy or trying to tease you about what I'm doing today because I would have had to put it in the thumbnail and in the description. So today I'm flying on Thai Airways in first class to Bangkok's Suvarnabhumi airport. Now Thai Airways didn't have a first class cabin for many years, but the story goes that when the new king was crowned back in 2016, he asked for them to reintroduce it. Any world-class airline should have a first class cabin, and I'm sure it didn't escape his attentions that it meant he would be able to travel in greater comfort when going overseas on state visits. And what the Thai king wants, the Thai king usually gets. So a mere 6 years after he was crowned, Thai Airways took delivery of 3 Boeing 777s with an 8-seat first-class cabin, one of which I'll be flying with today. And the Thai colour for royalty is yellow, and I think it's not a coincidence, as you'll see a little bit later on, that the cabin I'll be flying in is quite yellow. Now this is all a bit of a last minute trip and I won't actually have long in Bangkok. Now I don't usually like booking last minute because if reward availability doesn't show up, the cash fares are usually extortionate as it is last minute. But when on Tuesday I was looking to book this trip on Sunday, I found this redemption on Thai Airways. And I'll share a little bit later on in the video how much I paid for it, but this is Matt's Planet, so of course I reckon I got a bargain, a lot less than it would have cost you to buy this seat for cash. So if you'd like to see how Terminal 2 and Thai Airways treat their first class passengers, stick around. Hi, I'm Matt and this is Matt's Planet. I aim to entertain, educate and inspire with my travel adventures from planning to execution. I'll show you how you can travel in style for a lot less than you'd think. So subscribe so you can come with me. I was quite excited about this trip. Into the terminal, and the Thai Airways check-in area is located in the second rank of desks to the right. The landside part of T2 always feels cramped and crowded, and I can't say I love it, even if things improve the far side of security. We were scheduled for a 12:30 departure on a Sunday, so the logistics of getting to Heathrow meant I was only able to get there about 2 hours before departure, which wouldn't give me as much lounge time as I might usually plan for, but I was expecting to make up for that with the first class service on the plane. But just 2 hours before the departure time, I was surprised that the check-in area was virtually deserted. There was a dedicated manned lane for first passengers, even if the greeter chap was daydreaming. A smooth check-in, but 2 observations. I travelled only a couple of days after Thailand introduced a new electronic arrival process, and I was surprised that the desk agent didn't mention it, as a lot of people were being surprised by the new process on arrival. And as Thai doesn't have its own lounge in Heathrow, the agent directed me to the United, Air Canada and Singapore lounges in that order. She failed to point out that as a first class passenger I had access to the first class enclave within the Singapore lounge, which was actually quite a significant oversight, I thought. Once I was all done, the greeter guy leapt back into action and escorted me the 30 or so paces to, but not through, the fast track security lane. It's not far and security isn't exactly hard to find, so it was a bit of a gimmick, but hey, I suppose I did feel a little bit special getting this special treatment. And for I think the 4th time running, the fast track lane was much longer than the regular lane. Indeed, they actually redirected us through to the regular lanes as they were deserted. The Lufthansa lounge in this part of T2 has been renovated since I last visited, and I had access to that too, even if the check-in agent hadn't mentioned it. But the Singapore lounge has also been recently renovated, so I headed straight there. T2 is calmer and more open beyond security, but it's a fairly long hike across to the B gates, where those 3 other Star Alliance lounges are located. And so I was pleasantly surprised to find a buggy at the bottom of this escalator, operated by a chap holding a Thai Airways Royal First placard, and he offered to convey me across to the lounges in the B wing of the terminal. This service hadn't been mentioned at check-in. I could easily have walked straight past him if I wasn't paying attention. Indeed, I wouldn't have known to wait for this service had he been off on a rotation when I'd gotten to the bottom of those escalators. And he made me sit there for 6 or 7 minutes as we waited for another passenger who was reportedly right behind me. When I pointed out that the other passenger might spend an hour in the duty-free shops before heading across, he agreed to drive off with just me aboard. It was all very well intentioned and was a pleasant benefit of travelling in first class, and it was good fun. But it was not well thought out, and I would have gotten to the lounges several minutes quicker had I just walked. Indeed, he wanted to take me up to the concourse level in a vehicular lift, but I told him not to bother and saved another few minutes by just heading up the escalators by foot. From the main level, it's not far to this lounge portal, which will lead you to lifts to the Singapore and Air Canada lounges. Right turn to the Singapore lounges, and then it's a left turn to the first class zone once my boarding pass had been scanned. And through into the newly refurbished first class lounge. First impressions were very positive. Huge panoramic windows and a lot of decorative touches. Some tables were set for dining, and there were a variety of more relaxed seating options beyond. That really is a nice view. It was a bit of a tragedy that I only had an hour or so in that lounge. I could have watched that view all day. Some very private seating was available away from the windows, plus there was more workstation style seating here, with what you might call short straw seating behind. It was all very nice. On to the catering, and this was probably the best presented champagne station I've ever encountered. It was extremely elegant. Some nibbly pots at the front there, with some whiskey and wine at the other end. Those bottle stoppers were fantastic. This hadn't been an even remotely stressful airport experience, but that first sip of champagne was still very welcome. Cheers! Time was marching on, so I decided to sit down for some brekkie. An interesting menu of Western and Eastern options. It's not an extensive offering, but I couldn't go past the Eggs Benedict, although looking back at the footage, I should have expected the Egg Benedict I actually received. Not at all a big deal, as I could easily have just ordered another one, and it's a good thing that my calorific intake was limited here, as I was really looking forward to the food on the plane. The egg was perfectly prepared. There was also a buffet, although I struggled to film it as it was constantly being attended by the staff. Congee here. Other breakfast bits here. Elizabeth Shaw mince aren't a traditional breakfast good, I will concede, but that didn't stop me. Cheese, fruits and desserts here, all beautifully presented. And some drinks, the stuff you'd expect, plus some fairly premium spirit options. Not the widest choice you'll ever find, but what they had was top shelf stuff. I was really taken by this display. The backdrop looked great, and the presentation of the champagne and red wines was top drawer. Well done, Culinary Concepts London. This is one of those rare lounges where status alone won't get you in. Perhaps very top tier status with Singapore Air might work, but Star Alliance Gold won't. And it was a real shame I only had an hour there. It's an exceptional lounge. Even if the flowers in the lounge were all fake, at least they were good fakes. I actually left earlier than I absolutely had to, as I wanted to take a look at the refurbished Singapore Business Lounge next door, and I also stuck my nose into the Air Canada Lounge. I'll spare you the detail here, as I'm making a T2 lounge crawl video. The United Lounge is the only one left to be filmed, but I should make it there in the next month or two. Our gate was right next to the lounges, and wouldn't you know it, boarding was delayed. I really could have stayed for another champagne. But it did give me a moment to capture our chariot, as promised, a 4-year-old Boeing 777-300ER. The boarding delay was not lengthy though, and soon enough first class was called to board, and I was quickly on to a warm welcome and a left turn through the smaller forward business cabin. Thank you. Thank you. I wasn't escorted to my seat, which you might expect in first, but it was easy enough to find on my own. First impressions? That'll do. It's an elegant looking seat. Note the splashes of yellow, also as promised. At my seat was water, some welcome chocolates, headphones and an amenity kit, the latter two being lavishly packaged. A pillow and a cushion, or perhaps it was a cushion and a pillow, with slippers here too. The footrest / ottoman opened up to reveal some storage and the bedding kit. This panel opens up to reveal some hanging space. It's quite a clever design actually. I've never had welcome chocolates before, although I took them home for my mum. A pair of pyjamas were also delivered, extra large for me, and they were of a really high quality. Immediately beside you is a shallow open storage space, handy for glasses and hearing aids, with a deeper closing storage bin underneath. Power was available in there too. That's a remote for the IFE next to seat controls, then the headphones plug in here next to the USB port. On the other side is a reading light and a manual privacy screen, and not a lot else. No doors on these seats, which is perhaps unexpected given private first suites were already well in fashion when this plane was ordered 6 or so years ago. And overhead were lights, but no air vents. Couples would probably choose the middle pair, which would work well for people who still talk to each other. Effectively the same seat and space as you get in a window seat. There are central overhead bins in the first cabin, which is a little unusual these days, as they tend to leave them out to make the cabin feel more airy. No alcoholic pre-departure beverages were available, and orange juice had to suffice along with a hot towel. I actually gently grumbled about this to the purser who was passing at the time, and after trying the excuse that they couldn't serve champagne on the ground, she then admitted that as the beverage carts had been loaded in Thailand, they'd have to declare and pay tax on them if they cracked anything open here on the ground. So they could serve champagne, they just chose not to. First world problems, and I don't really mind, but an unfortunate consequence of my grumbling was that I think the purser felt that she had lost some face from this interaction, which meant I didn't see her again for the duration of the flight. I found places to store all the goodies and the safety briefing played. I'll also note that the meal orders for both dinner and breakfast were taken while we were still on the ground. It's a nearly 12-hour flight, so the ordering process did feel quite rushed. I ended up pushing back only 30 minutes late. It took about 15 minutes before our turn to use the runway came around, but eventually we were up. A good view of the old Concorde and of the bay where they test engines without ripping up the neighbour's lawn. This was early May and it was a lovely day to go flying. The table is enormous and pops out of the side unit. It's big, but not so big you couldn't have a buddy over to dine with you. The amenity bag came in its own bag, which is an extravagance I haven't seen before. Branded La Mer, which I gather is a very high-end cosmetics brand. The kit contained another bag of things, a green thing, a multi-purpose cleaning cloth and a dental kit including mouthwash. Another swipe and that inner bag contained 3 potions, moisturising cream, a treatment lotion and a hand treatment to be precise. I'm a man, so I have no idea what makes those 3 things different, but they were all high quality products. And that green thing was an ultra plush velvety eye mask. It was a good amenity kit, not up to Emirates standards, but quite memorable in its own right. It was perhaps no surprise that the slippers weren't quite big enough for my size 11s, but they still worked. The usual public service announcement to keep your shoes on for takeoff and landing. Given the culturally inappropriate interaction I'd had about having some champagne while still on the ground, I thought they might fast track a glass to me after takeoff, but it was a good 30 minutes before any service reached me. It was worth waiting for though, as Thai serves Laurent Perrier Grand Siècle on board, the long time but recently delisted house pour of BA in its first class. It's a really nice drop. The menu was large and leather bound, as you can see here, which made it feel premium even though it made the menu unsouvenirable. And it would seem that the photos of it I took have mostly been corrupted, which is quite annoying, but I'll do my best. The champagne was accompanied by 3 amuse-bouches, Substantial bites actually, and quite delicious. One salmon, one chicken and one cheesy, with some nuts on the sides too. It was all delicious. Next up was the caviar service. Yes, this was a proper first class experience. The traditional accompaniments were laid out and a jar of Ossetra caviar was delivered on ice. Crisp breads and blinis were then delivered, as was a shot of vodka served in a frozen glass. A really nice touch there. Let me linger on caviar for a moment. This was a 30-gram serving of what Wikipedia calls one of the most prized and expensive types of caviar. I know it was 30 grams as it was still served in the tin. A quick Google reveals that this exact tin retails for €75. Let me flash back to my Emirates first class experience, and there's no tin, and I think that's a lot more than 30 grams. And since my flight, Emirates has announced that caviar is now unlimited for their first class passengers. Emirates serves Persian caviar and is vague about specifically what it is, which makes it tricky to compare quality. And here's the serving I received on my Qatar first class flight. Again, no tin, and again no measurement, but that looks like more than 30 grams again. I believe this was berry caviar, which seems to be slightly lower quality than Ossetra caviar, or at least it's cheaper. So Thai is offering benchmarks well in quality, albeit not well in terms of quantity. Not perhaps the most insightful conclusion here, but I'll come back to this topic in 2 videos' time. But either way, it was delicious. Here's a better look at that serving dish. Is that mother of pearl as well? Next up was a dried meaty starter. I'm as annoyed as you that I don't have a picture of the menu, served with a glass of excellent red wine. I went for the Thai main, which brought together minced pork, chicken and lobster in a way that might be more about satisfying first class expectations than it is in reflecting traditional Thai cuisine, but boy was it good. One of the very best meals I've ever eaten on a plane. Om nom 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 nom. Even that chili oil side dish was spectacular. No dessert, but I had the cheese with a glass of port. Again, it was very nice, even if cheese is just about the last thing you'll ever find in Thai cuisine. Lunch filled the time it took us to reach the Black Sea, and we left Romania just south of Mangalia, so I felt it was time to check out the in-flight entertainment. This was best done through the handset, as the screen was so far away. Now I'll be honest here, I don't ever go to the cinema these days, and I have no interest in superheroes, which seems to be just about the only films Hollywood now makes, so it's really tough to comment on how good the options were, as I didn't recognise most of what was being offered. I did start watching Better Man, the Robbie Williams biopic where he is represented as a chimpanzee throughout. I didn't really get it, and I found it quite annoying to watch, so I turned it off after about 30 minutes. I'd had a moment on boarding to take a look at the 2-row business mini cabin behind first, and it's a relatively standard 1-2-1 layout, all aisle access, with seats alternating between being closer to the window or the aisle. Couples might want to choose the row in front of this one where the seats are close to each other. After dumping Robbie the chimp, I asked for my seats to be converted to a bed and went for a wander to take a better look at the aft business cabin. 8 rows here in addition to the 2 directly behind the first cabin, and it was probably 60% full that day. The lights were already out, but as some seats were free I was able to give the business seat a test run. It looked and felt decent enough, although I fear the foot cubby might be a little cramped when reclined. It's a seat I'd be happy to fly, especially if the business cabin's food is anywhere near as good as it had been up front. I also took a look at the economy cabin, which has a 333 layout, probably 70% full here, which made me wonder where everyone was when I was checking in. And the loo, a first class loo is always worth sharing, and there were 2 available for the maximum of 8 first class passengers. It was nice enough with Thai branded smellies rather than anything you might recognise. And here's the bed. This is when the extra space offered by first class accommodation really pays off. It was plenty wide enough and plenty long enough. I'm still sitting up here. And it was very comfortable. The lack of a door is more noticeable here, but it didn't really bother me. The seat across the aisle was vacant. I thought I'd try an episode of The Last of Us, as the movie selection wasn't thrilling me, accompanied by a Baron Otar 1795 cognac. Expensive and delicious, but once again nowhere near the standard of Emirates offering in their first cabin. A 12:30 takeoff with an 11.5-hour flight time means we were scheduled to land at midnight UK time, which is 6 AM in Bangkok. So it was unrealistic to expect to get a good night's sleep on this flight, but I did give it a go, and the substantial meal and hefty cognac meant I got perhaps 3 hours of quite reasonable sleep. I actually felt really good when I landed, and I woke up in time for breakfast, and this was one photo of the menu that my phone decided not to corrupt. The table was laid again, and 2 or 3 breakfasts were laid out. Fruit, bircher muesli with more fruit, pastries, and after a very smooth and barely noticeable transfer of the camera to my other hand, some tea. Then another breakfast arrived in the form of eggs Florentine. The muffin was oddly rubbery and, the hollandaise. The late great Anthony Bourdain was very suspicious of any hollandaise that wasn't freshly made, and no one's ever made fresh hollandaise on a plane, so something had been done to this to make it last until the breakfast service. It was a bit off in both texture and taste. The eggs were wildly overdone too, nothing like those I'd had in the lounge. Overall it wasn't great, it has to be said. It was perhaps a poor choice on my part, but if they offer something, they should be able to deliver it. And down into Bangkok as dawn was breaking. So how much did this flight cost me? Those who take notes while watching my video may recall me saying I'd booked a flight on Swiss in their business cabin. That was originally my plan to head to Bangkok. I'd booked Swiss using Air Canada Aeroplan points and had paid 80,000 plus about 300 quid for a one-way business class flight to Bangkok via Zurich. But when the dates of my return flight got locked in, that Swiss flight no longer worked, and I was pleased and surprised to see seats available on Thai in their first class for only 20,000 more Aeroplan points, plus about an extra 10 quid. I bought my Aeroplan points for 0.92p each during a 125% bonus promotion, so this flight cost me 1,226 quid for 11 and a bit hours in first class, which isn't cheap, but that's around 30% of what this seat would have cost if you'd paid cash. As further context, a direct one-way flight on Thai in economy that's booked less than a week from travel will cost you around 900 quid. So paying 300 more to fly that same route in first class is a no-brainer for me. But was it worth it? I've been tough in this review, but I think a first class offering demands the toughest of scrutiny. The ground experience at Heathrow was a bit random and haphazard, up until I reached the lounge at least, which was excellent. Remember though that it was Singapore Airlines lounge, not Thai's. The seat was very good. I'd read some reports that there were lots of scuffs and scrapes in and around the seat, but I thought mine was in very good condition. And most importantly, it was very comfortable, both in seat and bed mode. The service was excellent. I'll take responsibility for annoying the purser. It was the sort of attentive, personable yet discreet service you expect from Asian airlines and don't often get from Western ones. And the food, well, the lunch was exceptional and the breakfast was exceptionally average. As I said in the intro, any world-class airline should have a first cabin, but not many people are arguing that Thai Airways is a world-class airline, but they still have a first-class cabin. And it ticks a lot of the first class boxes. You get champagne, caviar, lobster and expensive cognac. But ticking the boxes isn't quite enough. Thai doesn't put these pieces together quite as elegantly as other airlines. And others, notably Emirates and Qatar, tick those boxes with products that are even more luxurious and or abundant than those Thai offers. I'd fly Thai first again, happily and enthusiastically. It's a really great offering. It's just not quite as great as those others. And I'd be able to fly them again, as seats do show up through Air Canada at a very reasonable price. Emirates seats also show up with Air Canada, but they cost 4 times as many points. Thai's availability tends to show up quite last minute, typically within a week of travel, but Air Canada's cancellation penalties are not harsh. So booking a placeholder that would work and keeping an eye open for a Thai redemption to pop up closer to your travel date is an entirely valid strategy. It's what I did. Which means that Thai's first product is quite similar to BA's. They're both excellent in subtly different ways, and you'll have a great time aboard both airlines. They're just not as great as other firsts, but both are accessible through points, so our experience is that anyone watching these videos actually can have. Emirates, Lufthansa and Air France might have better offerings, but that's irrelevant if you can't afford to actually fly them using cash or points. I've not mentioned Etihad's first class offering. Subscribe if you haven't already, as that's how I got back to London, and my reviews, plural, will be along in a few weeks. And I was off into Suvarnabhumi airport, and there was one last perk of first class to enjoy. All first passengers were greeted at the plane's door and were escorted to the passport desks. But not to any old passport desks. I was led to what I think was a special area for arriving priority passengers. I turned my video off, so I missed the moment where a very grumpy Westerner was detained by 7 or 8 hefty security staff. And by detained, I mean that at least 4 of them were physically sitting on him to prevent him from moving. To say he was unhappy with the arrangement would be a gross understatement. A pleasant welcome to Thailand for me, less so for him. But I was through in seconds, and with no checked bags was rapidly out to find a grab taxi into town to recuperate for 24 hours before the journey back home began. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and leave me a comment. Did this look appealing to you? And if you'd like to support what I'm doing more directly, there is a Patreon account, link below. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.